Hi spooky friends, welcome to my channel, Kelly Does Stuff. I am so excited about today's video where I get to share with you a Halloween project that I recently completed. I gave myself the challenge of creating a village vignette for $30 or less. Now, village collecting is not exactly an inexpensive hobby, and there's a place. Yeah, I understand that term is relative, but even if you are willing or interested in spending $40 to $200+ per piece for a Lumax Third Apartment 56 village piece, we all know you don't stop at just one piece, because of course you need the accessories that go with those pieces. And then to really complete the look, you're going to need some trees, you're going to start creating roads and sidewalks. Then one piece becomes 10. And before you know it, an entire room of your house is committed to your Halloween village. And maybe you're asking your husband if he can build an addition on the house to accommodate your growing collection. I mean, you know, I wouldn't do that. I've been collecting village pieces for probably about 18 years. And when I first started, I would wait until the Lumax pieces went on sale like 60% off at Michael's. And then sometimes I would have a coupon that you could apply to sale items. And I would buy 1 or 2 pieces a year. However, that's becoming harder and harder to do now. I'm in Michael's and I came here to look at Halloween stuff. Some of the Lumax Halloween villages, they're already sold out. Now it's July 27th, maybe? So I really believe that village collecting is for everybody, and I don't think that prices should get in the way of pursuing a new hobby or having a lot of fun. And I also think part of the joy is just being really creative and seeing what you can come up with, which is why I wanted to see if I could create a vignette, which would mean a house, an accessory, trees, anything that I would like to include in a small village display. I wanted to see if I could do that for $30 or less. So that's what this video is going to be. Currently it is August 8th as I'm filming this, and it is approximately 1 million degrees. And so if you live somewhere where fall is in your sights, on the horizon, you're experiencing slightly cooler temperatures, leave a comment and let the rest of us know so we can live vicariously through your fall vibes. Also, before we get started, my dog Angel has a really quick message. Oh, thank you, Angel. That was really sweet to remind all of our spooky friends to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Okay, now that we said that, let's go ahead and get started to see how I went about making this vignette. The first thing I needed was a building, so I headed to Goodwill for this and found this great piece for just $4.99. The other thing I knew I was going to use is this styrofoam that I bought at Home Depot for $6.97. It is what I use for all of my village displays. Next, it was time to head to the dollar store for the rest of my supplies, materials, and decorations. And I wanted to go into this assuming that this would be somebody's very first time creating a village display. So maybe they don't have paint or paintbrushes or the glue. So all of those things I included in my $30 budget. I did make a couple assumptions that you would either already own or have access to borrowing from a friend or neighbor. A couple of things: pen or pencil, some type of scissor cutting instrument, and then some sort of blade, a knife, or a box cutter. I also knew I was going to need some sort of flocking, which is this moss stuff. This is a staple in village creating. It's obviously great for ground cover, but I use it to hide all manner of little mistakes, and it adds some great creepy detail to your houses, accessory, fences, etc. that you will be making. I'm so glad you can get this at the dollar store because it can be quite expensive. When it came to paint colors, I absolutely knew I would need black, brown, and white. Again, these are staples that will be used in every display that I use. I also knew that I would want some yellow, some orange, and green to help turn the building into more of a Halloween spooky look. I couldn't find all the colors that I wanted at the dollar store in acrylic paint. They had other types of medium, but I had never used those before and I didn't want to experiment on this project. So I headed over to Michael's and was pleasantly surprised. They had a major sale. The little tubes of acrylic paint are only 99 cents, and
for this sale, if you bought 3, you got 3 free. This was fantastic for my budget. So here are all the supplies I got. And I'll be honest, while I was shopping, I lost track of how much money I spent because I couldn't pass up the opportunity to get supplies for other projects I was working on. And it was just too confusing to keep track of several different budgets at the same time. So then when I got home, I had to add everything up and make the math. And no matter how many times I did it, 2 + 2 always equaled 4, and I really needed it to equal 1. So then I had to start getting creative and taking things away. I knew I absolutely needed paint, brushes, glue, flocking, of course the house, and definitely some lights. One of the hardest decisions came down to the tree I was going to create. I had planned to acquire sticks from my yard and then cut out leaves from this pick that I got at the dollar store. However, I had some concerns about this plan because normally I work with a hot glue gun, and without it, I just wasn't entirely sure how I was going to get the sticks to stick into the styrofoam, 1, without breaking, and then 2, would the tacky glue be enough to hold them together and create enough stability? I was also pretty committed to using these roses that were on a pick on clearance from Michael's. Once I found this little Coco figurine at the dollar store, I knew the theme of the vignette would be Day of the Dead, and these roses would really add to the theme. I looked closer at the pick and realized once I pulled off the roses, I would be left with these great leaves. And I thought maybe I could just paint them and then I would already have a ready-made tree. The proportions were a little bit off because some of the leaves were really large, but that's kind of what I like about the Halloween Village. It gives you the flexibility to do all sorts of crazy things. Here is what I ultimately ended up with. I'm sure we're all ready to start creating the vignette, but I did want to share the process with you versus just providing the list of specific materials used in case you wanted to do a different theme for your village or you could not find these exact materials. Let the fun begin. I placed the house on the styrofoam and then outlined it where I would want it to go using a pencil. I then drew a path onto the styrofoam. And what is great about the styrofoam is that it will take the impression of whatever you put on it. So this is not even any sort of carving. You're just drawing and it will create a path. I then decided how big I wanted the overall vignette to be and cut off the extra styrofoam. Make sure you save all of your styrofoam. We're going to use this later on for some other fun details to the piece. Next, I turned my path into cobblestones, and this is a technique I use all of the time. It's a much more budget-friendly option than purchasing road, and I actually think it looks more realistic and fits more cohesively in with the vignette. I used a pen here to do this, more of a kind of like a rounded soft point than a fine point pen. You don't really want to carve through the styrofoam, and again, it's not even about being able to see what you are drawing, so a pencil would work here. Again, it's just about making the impressions because we are going to paint over all of this. Speaking of painting, let's turn this house into a Halloween house. I mixed white, yellow, and a little bit of brown to do the base color of the house. I added browns, orange, and greens to give some dimension and detail to the brick so it wasn't just one solid color and to make the house overall look older and creepier. I painted the roof brown and didn't worry about a thorough covering here. Since I didn't have red paint, I liked the idea that some of the red would show through to give some dimension to the roof. And then it's just a matter of spending as much time on details and colors as you want to. You can spend as little or as long as you want on this. It is kind of meditative. While the paint on the house dried, it was time to work on the base. I textured the cobblestone path using a rock, and this definitely would have been easier to do before I painted the rest of the base, but I forgot. If you get impatient waiting for paint to dry, you can use a hairdryer. After the black paint of the cobblestones is completely dry, paint over them in gray using a dry brushing technique. The dry brush technique allows the detail you created with the rock to pop because it allows the black base coat to show through in certain areas. Once that is dry, do it again with an even lighter gray and drier brush to create highlights and bring forward even more details. To add the moss to the base, I first broke it up into smaller pieces. This will allow it to go a lot farther, and I really needed to stretch this since I only had one bag of moss. I wasn't really sure how much coverage it would give me. I also knew I wanted to save some for the house and some of the other details I was going to be adding. I used the tacky glue spread out evenly with a paintbrush to attach it to the base. Another option for ground cover is collecting rocks from your backyard. You can fill in some gaps in the moss, and also it just gives it a great realistic detail. I don't know if anybody's looked into buying rocks lately for your backyard or landscaping project, but they are not cheap. We have a lot of white rock in our yard, and we're planning to add some more, so I wasn't too keen on stealing even a few of our white rocks, knowing I was going to be spending more money to add rock. Fortunately, a few months ago, I bought a test bag of white rocks. At least that's what the bag says, but no matter how long I left them in the sun or rinsed them, they were orange. So I used those rocks for my project. Soon I realized I would need more than I could hold in my hand, so I decided let me go grab a bucket. And then I thought, wait a minute, what if people don't have a bucket? So then I used my shirt as a bucket. But then I thought, what if somebody from a nudist colony wants to do this project and they don't have a shirt to turn into a bucket? And you can really go down a rabbit hole of this thinking, so you guys, I'm so sorry that I have not covered everything. I set my rocks to the side and began working on painting the leaves. I pulled them all off of the stem and then later realized that I was going to use the entire stem itself and had to put them back on. So I would recommend, if you want to go this route, just keep the leaves on the stem and paint the whole thing together. I'd never painted on this material before, so I wasn't sure how it would take the paint, and I was pleasantly surprised. I absolutely love the way these came out. I experimented by painting some of them a brown first and then some of them an orange, and then I didn't want them to be a solid color, and this is where you can just kind of have fun and mix colors together, do a different technique with the brushes to give them kind of streaks to look like the little vein thingies in the leaves. This is definitely one of those things that I could have spent forever on. And I practically did, because once I realized I was going to use the pick as the tree itself, I needed to go back and paint the stems, like a brown and orange, kind of a mix of color, but I didn't want to paint all over my leaves, so then I had to be a little bit more detailed in what I was doing. Before I moved on, I had to take a break to throw Angel the ball. Buckle up, spooky friends. It's time for the fun to really begin. With my extra styrofoam, I decided to make a stone wall. You could do a brick wall. You could do a fence. You could do whatever your imagination tells you to do. Stone just felt right for me for this vignette. It's a great way to add some creepy elements because the stones are uneven. They can be different colors. You can pull out sections of the styrofoam in between the stones to make it look like it's a crumbling wall. Really just let your fun and imagination fly with this. The next thing I wanted to do was create a haunted well, so I again turned to my leftover styrofoam. I carved out a base and then I began carving out the individual pieces of stone. Using a box cutter or knife, round off the edges of the rectangles to make them look more like stone, and then use the tacky glue to glue them onto your base. There were several times throughout this project I wish I had the magic of a hot glue gun. The tacky glue obviously takes longer to dry, which means I had to wait in between layers to add more of the bricks because I kind of flipped and moved around. But that was okay, because while it was waiting to dry, I just moved on to the next thing I wanted to make, which was a bench. Use a pen or pencil to score in the planks of wood, and then use a box cutter or knife to make light scratches that look like the grain of the wood. And don't forget to cut out 4 legs for your bench. Use tacky glue to glue all your pieces of the bench together. Next, it was time to create the tree. I cut off the bottom part of the pick to give it kind of a lower center of gravity. If the tree was going to be really tall, the full height of the pick, it was going to fall over. As it was, I was going to need to secure the bottom of the styrofoam with some rocks and other weight. Once again, I used a scrap piece of styrofoam and added some tacky glue. Those rocks that I grabbed from the backyard, I attached to the glue, and this was the part of the process that required the most amount of patience. If you have a hot glue gun, you know that the rocks would be attached pretty quickly, but I needed to attach the rocks to each side of this cube of styrofoam and let it dry. Thankfully, with it being about 9 million degrees here, I could set it out into the sun and it dried fairly quickly. And here we are, back at the well again. I've added the first layer of paint and now I'm going in, adding a lot of green. I wanted these to kind of be old algae type stones, and this is really how these types of projects go. You work on one element, a tree or a bench, and you're waiting for things to dry or cure, and you work on another piece, and then you're just constantly kind of switching back and forth. And unfortunately here the camera is really out of focus, but I am creating a sign for my well. Once again, awful camera, but here I'm gluing some moss to my well with the tacky glue. I painted the edge of the styrofoam, swirling together yellow and orange and green to make a really disgusting pukey green color. I wanted the well to have a little bit of a water effect, so I used the plastic covering of my little Coco figurine and painted a little bit of a green on the top of it. I didn't want to completely saturate it because I planned to put a light under there and I wanted the light to kind of be diffused coming through this green watery effect type thing. And here we go again, back at the bench, adding moss. And now we're back to the tree, trying the moment of truth to stick it into the styrofoam and see if it will stand up. Hooray! It is standing. I decided to add a few more rocks just to give it that extra weight at the bottom. Back to the well. Are you dizzy yet? I assembled all of the pieces of the well together and secured it with the tacky glue. My little Coco figurine had a blue base, and that just wouldn't do, so I painted it more of that puke green color. And this really was the point. I thought I was done and ready to assemble, but I felt like the vignette needed just a little bit more detail, so I decided to create some mini tombstones. I gathered the last of my details, pulling the pumpkins off the pick, taking the lights out of the packaging, and taking the roses off of the pick. Finally, it was time to assemble, and I could not be more excited to see how this turned out. I absolutely love the way this turned out. This project was so much fun and I really learned a lot, particularly how to make my materials stretch even farther, which is always a good thing regardless of the budget of your project. I think this project was a really great example to show that you can do Halloween displays and vignettes and village creations without spending all of the money in your bank account. The other takeaway I would have is if you're really going to get into this, the one tool I would absolutely invest in is a hot glue gun. This project was definitely not for speed, which was fine because that wasn't the point. But if you're going to be doing this more often, hot glue will just be your friend. A lot of time in this project was spent just waiting for glue to dry so I could move on to the next step. So what do you guys think? Please leave a comment and let me know. Let me know if this was helpful for you, if you're going to try this, what other tips that you might have, not only just for budget-friendly tips, but also for creating different accessories or texturizing your pieces or different tools that you use to help make things easier. Let me know if you have any questions and let me know what types of videos you'd like to see in the future. I plan on doing a range of videos, some that will be long like this that go into a lot of detail, and just some quick 1-minute tutorials on how to do things like the bench or maybe the well. And of course, if you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'm really trying to grow the channel. Also hit the like button and share with 5 or 10 spooky friends. Thanks, guys. It was so much fun to share this with you, and I'll see you next time. Happy creating.